Good afternoon, everyone. Eminent resource persons, Dr. Partha Bhattacharya and Miss Shakshi Dogra, Honorable Vice Principal and HOD Department of History, Dr. Sushmita Mukherjee, IQAC Coordinator, Dr. S.S. Yadav, HOD Department of English, Anjana Dev, and dear participants, all are welcome to this one-day national webinar on Journeying Through Wonderlands, What's So Popular About Alice and Tintin, organized by the Department of English in collaboration with IQAC, Syamaprasad College, Kolkata. Before beginning the program, I would like to request all the participants only to write relevant questions for the speakers in the YouTube chat box, along with your designation and institutional affiliation. Please avoid writing any unnecessary greetings or comments. Only please write the questions and also abstain from self-introducing yourselves so that it becomes easier for the organizers to single out the relevant questions. Another important information is that the feedback link will be provided in the YouTube chat box towards the end of the webinar during the valedictory session. And this link will remain active for an hour. E-certificates will be provided only after successful completion and submission of the feedback form within 7 to 10 days. Your kind cooperation is highly solicited. Now let us begin our program. At the outset of the program, I would like to request the Honorable Vice Principal of Syamaprasad College and also HOD Department of History and Chief Patron of this webinar, Dr. Sushmita Mukherjee, to offer a welcome address. Vice Principal, ma'am, please proceed.
Thank you. A very good afternoon to everyone present here. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming Dr. Partha Bhattacharya, Assistant Professor, Amity University, Patna. Amity University, Patna, and Ms. Shakshi Dogra, Assistant Professor, Gargi College, Delhi, and Professor Priyanka Tripathi, the guide and mentor of Professor Bhattacharya, who have come here in spite of their busy schedule and agreed to share their views with us. I extend a warm welcome to all my college teachers and students and all other participants who are attending the webinar today. I also extend a cordial welcome to the teachers of English department and head of the department, Professor Anjana Dev, whose concerted and well-coordinated effort have made this webinar possible. I also welcome Mithun Gayan, Assistant Professor, Department of Education, and Shulagna Shom of the History Department, who have kindly agreed to provide the technical support, and also our IQAC coordinator, Srinivas Singh Jadhav, who has always been an inspirational force for us. Since the outbreak of the pandemic situation and the consequent lockdown, we are unable to attend our academic institution. These webinars have now become a new platform for interacting and exchanging intellectual views, ideas, and discourses. I profusely thank English department for selecting such a fascinating topic, Journeying Through Wonderlands, What's So Popular About Alice and Tintin, in collaboration with IQAC department. When one reads Alice in Wonderland as a child, one perceives it as an innocent tale. But as one matures, one realizes after re-examination of the text that it is perhaps not so innocent. And over the years, it has been interpreted and analyzed in different approaches. It has been considered as a political allegory, with Wonderland as a symbolic England and Queen of Hearts as Queen Victoria, or Alice is also treated as an allegory of colonization, as a reaction to contemporary discoveries in the field of science, mathematics, colonization, and change of society. Some even considers it to be a satire of the War of Roses. I now wait to hear the compelling and absorbing ideas and discussions from our HOD English department and also from our speakers who have come here. Thank you so much. We'll all be enriched by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shushmita.
Thank you, Vice Principal Ma'am, for your welcome address. She has been continuously inspiring us for the organization of such a webinar. And under her dynamic guidance and inspiration, we have been able to organize this webinar. So thank you, ma'am. Shushmita ma'am, thank you once again. Now, may I request the HOD, Department of English, Anjana Dev, she is also the patron of this webinar, to deliver the keynote address. Anjana Dev, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. On behalf of the Department of English and IQAC, Syamaprasad College, I welcome all participants to this one-day national webinar on Journeying Through Wonderlands. What's so popular about Alice and Tintin? We have received an overwhelming response that is projected in the registration of today's webinar. I extend my gratitude to the speakers joining us from afar, Dr. Parthu Bhattacharya from Patna, Amity University, Sakshi Dogra from Gargi College, Delhi University. My gratitude to my Vice Principal, to the IQAC coordinator, the college administration, together with the teaching and non-teaching staff of the college. I extend a very warm gratification to the organizing committee of my department. My full department is in the committee. I'm very proud to say that. The joint conveners for today's program, Dr. Mohammed Abdul Salim and Damini Ray, other very enthusiastic colleagues, very sincere, I must say, Dr. Shuchishmita Mitra Vishwas, Priya Midday, and Onurima Paul. And I'm very grateful to two very supportive colleagues for their technical assistance, Dr. Mithun Gayan and Shulogna Shom. Now, to strike at the keynote of today's program, the concept note. At the onset, I take the opportunity to mention that with the introduction of popular literature in the curriculum of English studies in several Indian universities, including University of Calcutta, both teachers and students have had to re-evaluate what is defined as popular in relation to literature, popular in relation to literature, and to explore the headings and subheadings, the labels and stereotypes that popular works often struggle with. It might well serve us to remember that while he was alive, William Shakespeare wrote tragedies and comedies in their watertight compartments. And he was then thought of as a writer of popular literature. And even today, he is acknowledged to be one of the best English writers of all time. So, a uh, writer, popular literature writer, today is acknowledged as the best English writer of all time. So, popular literature is not only meant for children, not only entertainment, not a very easy mode, but probably a genre, if I can use the term, not in the very radical sense, a genre which can be explored at every nook and corner by researchers or discussed thoroughly at such webinar gatherings very successfully. With the Industrial Revolution, famous works of literature that were treasured for consumption by an exclusive number of well educated elites became accessible to large sections of the educated society in printed form. The growth of literature, the growth of popular literature has paralleled the spread of literacy and has been facilitated by technological developments in printing. Widely translated, quoted, and adapted for various media, Lewis Carroll's richly imaginative stories, Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, both have provoked fascination not only among children but also among critics and philosophers. The reason for the enormous popularity of these works was that they were written and published at a time when children's books were discussed, designed to instruct rather than entertain. Alice's chaotic nonsense world provides an inexhaustible popular mine of literary, philosophical, and scientific themes. Equally compelling and thrilling is Herge's The Adventure of Tintin, adapted in various media, including an animated television series, a radio presentation, a video game, and the theater. In addition to the diverse subject matter, Herge's masterly graphic art allows readers to delve deep into the host of life issues, the exotic landscapes, and supernatural settings of his narratives. Today's webinar aims to explore the nuances in the representation of such fascinating characters as Alice and Tintin and the worlds they traverse and their place in popular literature, both in terms of form and subject, with a view to enriching the students and teachers at the same time. I wish today's attempt to be a great, great success. Thank you. Selim?
Thank you, Anjana ma'am, for your informative keynote address. She has been wonderfully explained the objective of today's webinar, along with the inclusion of such popular literature in undergraduate syllabus. So once again, thank you, HOD ma'am. Now, let us begin our technical session. The speaker of the first session is Dr. Partho Bhattacharya, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Amity University, Patna. The topic of his discussion is Mapping the Mystic East, Comic Studies and Tintin in Tibet. However, before Dr. Bhattacharya's lecture, I would like to request our HOD ma'am, Anjana ma'am, to formally introduce Dr. Bhattacharya. Anjana ma'am, please.
Yes, thank you. Uh, Dr. Partho Bhattacharya is an accomplished person at a very young age, I see, Congratulations, Dr. Bhattacharya. I am really fascinated
Thank you.
by after reading your biodata. Dr. Partho Bhattacharya is an assistant professor of English, Amity University of English Studies and Research, Amity University, Patna. He completed his MA in 2012 and MPhil 2016 from the University of Burdwan. He obtained his PhD in English from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences from Indian Institute of Technology, Patna, in 2019. His research was based on trauma studies, memory, and post-memory studies in comics and graphic narratives. His research interests include South Asian literature, gender studies and comic studies, autobiography, and translation studies. Apart from two chapters in edited volumes with Routledge, that is the global edition, and one with University Press of Mississippi, that is forthcoming, he has published with reputed journals like the Journal of Graphic Novels and Comics, Rupkatha, Gnosis, Indian University Press Journal of English Studies, Journal of English Language and Literature, etc. His proposals have been accepted in reputed international conferences. I wish Dr. Bhattacharya a grand, successful career. Now, may I invite Dr. Bhattacharya to share with us his studious thoughts, his very treasured thoughts with the enthusiastically, eagerly waiting audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjana ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you once again. Now, I would like to request our first speaker, Dr. Partho Bhattacharya, to begin his discussion. Dr. Bhattacharya, please proceed.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank Dr. Sumita Mukherjee, Vice Principal. I'd like to thank Mrs. Anjana Dev, the HOD of the English Department. I'd like to thank Mohammad Abdul Salim sir and Damini Ray ma'am and S.S. Yadav, IQC coordinator, HOD Hindi. Thank you all of you. Thanks a lot for inviting me. And now I'd like to focus on today's lecture. Should I share the screen right now?
Yes, you may go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Is it full screen now? And is it visible on the screen?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. So today's topic is mapping the Mystic East, comic studies, and Tintin in Tibet. Okay, I'm Dr. Partho Bhattacharya from Department of English, Amity University, Patna. This is a brief outline of my lecture. What is comics and its nuances, theorizing comic studies, what's in their quest for adventure, visualizing in Tintin in Tibet, journey through mystery, representation of East in Tintin. Before I proceed to the next slide, I'd like to share that Tintin in Tibet was written and it is pronounced as Tata Tibet. We will pronounce it in English as Tintin in Tibet, yes, but it is pronounced as in French is Tata or Tibet. So that is what we should also follow. What is comics and what is its comics nuances? Narratives intertwined text and images, from texts and images to form an image text. This is the first point. Now let us focus on what is a comics. What is a comics page? If we concentrate on a comics page, we will find that there are so many things which are written as the alphabetical orders and there are some things which are the images or illustrations, and both these things combined together is forming a page of comics. And that is why the term image text comes, and this term was coined by University of Florida in 2014-15 in their conference. What are the elements in comics? Since we need to read the textual portion, we also need to focus on the illustration part as well. Now, if we need to focus on the illustration part, we'll find that several machineries are there to portray to support the text in these comics pages. What are the elements? The elements, first of all, the speech bubbles, the panels, the gutters, the sound effects, and the other cartooning parts and other cartooning strategies. Those are the elements in a comics. Comics, both singular and plural, because it is termed as singular by Scott McCloud in his book Understanding Comics in 1993-1994. In page number 7, he said that comics is a singular word. So before we use the word comics as a plural, we must know that it can be used as a singular word also. Now, singular when referring to the medium itself, and plural when referring to the works of comics all together collectively. Then we can say that it's a comics and it's a plural now. But when we use the word comics, it sometimes means the one-page comics, or maybe the medium that I am choosing for producing the art. Part of popular culture appealing to the mass consuming, primarily catering to the children. Now, why it is called as the popular culture? Because it is not the conventional one that we used to follow, the conventional novel, which is very much text oriented. But whereas in comics you will find that the text are supported by illustrations, and these illustrations are helping you to deeply dive into the text. One, and two is that once you read or once you focus on those images, it will give you a plethora of thinking. It will give you numerous ways of thinking and focusing on those panels. Often confused related to the graphic novels, as it is a business-centric term. Now, nowadays, if you find that the people calling the comics as the graphic novels, but we refrain from using this word graphic novels just because Hilary Shupin in 2008 in his in her article, she wrote that it's the graphic novel, it's a business-centric term. Though the phrase, though the term was coined in 1964, but we still refrain from using the phrase or the term graphic novel just because it's a business-centric term. Rather, we focus on the comics because the core word, the source of this illustration is the comics. That's why we stick to the word comics. Well-known and popular forms like European comics, comic album, Franco-Belgian comics like bande dessinée, or Japanese comics like manga. So there are several forms, several titles, or several namings of these comics, and it depends on the culture. Because if you go to the manga art, it has its own cultural influence. It has its own influence of their own race, of their own people, like that. And if you go to the Franco-Belgian comics, you will find that there are several aspects, there are several influences of these art schools. I will talk a little later on in respect to the Tintin and Tibet. And there is one, this comic album, it's called European comics. In that, you will find there are so many pages coalesced together, administered together, and assimilated the ideas so that it can produce a single way meaning. And there are so many numerous theories right now in comic studies, and we can apply that in our study of that particular book. So terms in comics, since I just discussed, so here's an example that what is a panel. See, the panel is the whole frame on which all those images are coalesced together, all which images are assembled together. The gutter, what is the gutter? The gutter is just the, look at this arrow. The gutter is the smallest narrow space between these two panels. Okay, the speech bubbles, these are the speech bubbles, where it denotes the speaker's voice. It denotes the who is speaking, because if you put an oval shape round and if you put some text in that, people maybe get confused with who is speaking. So that's why once you put the oval shape and you put the arrow or maybe some two small oval shaped circles, these are called the speech bubbles. And sometimes if we need to show the character is thinking, actually is not speaking to the other characters but is thinking, we use the thought bubbles. So here you can see that thought bubbles or thought balloon, you can say anything. So here you will find that there is one big bubble, and under those bubbles there are small bubbles. It means that it is coming from the character's mind or character's brain or character's head. And other is the caption, where the caption is, this is the caption where you can find the narrator is actually communicating with the reader. The narrator is actually communicating the plot of the story or the background of the story to this narrator. And the sound effects, see, this is the sound effect. If you suppose, if you slap someone, if you fall from some some places, then you need not to write that, oh my god, I have fallen, oh my god, someone has left. No, you don't need to write those things. You can use the sound effects to portray, to represent that particular sense of emotion, to particular sense of that thinking. Comic studies, what's in there? See, comic studies are a field of academic research focused on comics and sequential art, consisting comic books, comic strips, cartoons, graphic narratives, animation, digital media, and recently the films also, since we know that DC and Marvel and all these things. Comic studies is composed of theory, history, philosophy, aesthetics, cultural relevance of comics, as well as the industrial production, marketing, collection of comics, and comics art. So on one hand, we will find the why comic studies is important, because while we need to interpret the text, it has nothing less than a literary art, literary text, because it has the literature, it has the text, it has a story, it has a narrative, everything it has, but it is represented in the form of a visual format, in the form of the visuality, in the sequential art, in the sequentiality. So what is sequential art? Sequential art is nothing other than the art which has been represented in a visual format, but it is sequential. Yeah, you can tell me that every comics or every graphic novel is sequential. No, this is impossible, because there are some graphic novels, sorry, graphic narratives or comics where you can find the the flash forward and uh, flashback and flash forward. So all these techniques are there, and sometimes you can find the something is happening and the next portion is happening almost 50 pages later. So there is a sequentiality maintained, but that is something else. That's the technique is called the arthology, the regular arthology, the restrained arthology, other things that I'm not going the details right now. So the another section is that the comics industry, that how comics is produced and how comics is getting marketed. Since this is comics, the word comics was there, it was not very much well assessed and well acclaimed by the readers or by the publishing houses, because comics was meant only for the children. So people did not take the subject, did not take this genre as seriously as they take it as some other genres of the novel. But when they term as word graphic novel, the industry, the publishing industry, they find that, oh my god, this is a new term, so we can push this book to the reader self in the name of this graphic novel. The third one is that comic studies may draw scholarship from a broad range of disciplines, including history, literary studies, media and communication art history, sociology, linguistics, philosophy, business and marketing, so many things, and recently the censored subjects as well. So comic studies as a whole, the studies of comics is nothing other than the literary theories we need to apply on one hand, and we need to find out that what are the things that the comics artists, the comics practitioners, they are doing, because what I will draw is not the same what some other will draw. So there are some differences, there are some different approaches. In India, you can find that there are some different approaches from northern India, northern section of the Indian part, and the northern part of India and the southern part of the India. You will find that there are so many differences in using the arts. So, but the themes are the same. Look at the themes are more or less the same, but the way, the approaches, the different the strategies, they are very much different. Now coming to the Tintin in Tibet, or Tata Otobe. Harji. Who is Harji? This man is named as Harji. His original name is Georges Prosper Remy. He is a Belgian cartoonist, and he Bernard Havelmans, a cryptozoologist, gave Harji a book inscribing on the inside the suggestion that one day this character Tintin will meet Yeti. Now, the whole novel, the whole graphic narrative is all about how Tintin has a chance to meet Yeti in Tibet. This is the whole construct and whole aspect of this comics. And there are three parts in Tintin in Tibet, and Harji has beautifully drawn this comics. Why? Because there are two aspects. One is that since Tintin, we know that Tintin is meant for the children. Yes, if a child can read Tintin, he will be amazed, and he will have some imaginary island. He will have an imaginary self to imagine that Tintin is nothing but the person who is reading. And at the same time, Tintin is written for the adult audience also. It's not only meant for the children, but also it is meant for the adult audience as well. Why? Because there are so many things underlying inside these comics. And what are the things that we will see in the next slides? See, this is the 20th. There are 24 comic albums, and this is the 20th comic album in the Adventures of Tintin that has been published from 1929 to 1976, and it has been illustrated by Georges Prosper Remy and the Harji, and it's a milestone in the Franco-Belgian comics. Why? Because Belgian comics, Franco-Belgian comics at the time, during this Second World War, you can say that 1920 and 1976, between the Second World War, during that period, German Communist Party actually went to invade Belgium and France, and it has so many nuances like Marcel School of Art, like the Ligne Claire technique or Ligne Claire technique, better to say. What are these? What are these? These are the Marcel School of Art, where with the comics panels, the comics frames are put together as if it has been drawn, and there are so many nuances in that. There are so many complexities in that. Whereas on the other side, the Ligne Claire or Ligne Claire, what is that? Ligne Claire, it means Ligne Claire. It's nothing other than the clear line technology. Simple clear line technology. In Tintin, if you see the comics pages, you will find that most of the panels are drawn as if one single line. And suppose if you see the face of Tintin, the one oval shape. If you see the eyes of the Blessed Lightning, so you'll find that the two dots as the eyes. So it is nothing other than the clear line technologies or the clear line strategies that has been put together in Tintin. And we can find that there are several series on Tintin, and you can find Amazon Prime. There is 3 or 4 series or of Tintin. You will find the films. So it's talking about the humor, satire, and commentary on society. And several characters on Tintin: the Tintin and Snowy the dog, Captain Haddock, who is very much speaking the stupid words like billions of bilious blue blistering barnacles, and this is the repetition of this word you can find in Tintin by Captain Haddock. Professor Calculus, Bianca Castiglione, and Thompson, the detectives, which you will find in this particular comics. So the arts and techniques. The first art, I'm just talking about that. See the work of art. How is it very much clear? How the clear line strategy has been maintained all through the pages of all through the panels of Tintin, and why it has been employed, why this strategy has been taken, because this is pretty much clear and expressive. Look at this section. You will find that this is a section where it's written that possibly. All right, let's suppose he's still alive. So someone is talking Chang, and look at the expression of this Captain Haddock and Tintin. They the note of exclamation and the note of the interrogation are there. So nothing other than that, nothing other than that is a speech bubble or a thought bubble or a scream bubble, better to say, and the two ovals over their head. Nothing other than it is written. So it is very much expressive. It's more of written language that, sorry, it's more of expressive language than of a written language. In the next portion, you will find also that some of the portions which has only images, only expression, nothing other than that. Look at this, this portion where you will find that he is gonna sleep, that's doing nothing other than that. Next, let me just move this thing. Just wait a minute. Yeah. See here here this dog is found something dropped into the water, the splash. Now they are not speaking anything, the good heavens, the captain, and they heard what the splash, and the water is coming upward. So these are the clear and clear expressions that has been all through the pages of Tintin in Tibet. And this is the last page. Why I am taking this? Because if you know the story of Tintin in Tibet, when Chang was found and Chang has been taken away by Tintin and the other shepherds like Tharke and all these people, uh, the Yeti is seen as a mourning Yeti, mourning just because he has lost Chang, he has lost his friend. And look at the expression. Look at the expression of this Yeti. You cannot find the face of Yeti. He's just seeing those humankind, the human being who are taking Chang from him, because we know that Yeti. We don't know whether Yeti is this or not, but we know that Yeti sometimes eats a man, and Yeti will destroy the monasteries and all these things. But Yeti is very much sad, and uh, Harji could have shown Yeti's face, but he has not seen here. He has look at the camera angle, the mind angle from which Harji is drawing. He is drawing from this angle, where from the Yeti can see the human race, human beings taking Chang away from him. So it's a beautiful expression. Nothing other. There is no speech. There is no speech bubble. There is no thought bubble. Only the mourning Yeti who is standing very much there, looking at the human being, and then Harje put the final word, the end. So it's very much clear and expressive style. And look at the use of the lignite clear or the clear line style or the strategy. Arts and techniques. In the clear line level, Hart just sought too much attention for the outside aspect of his work. In strip making means in making those panels, gutters, and all this strip making, he considers his narrative technique and compositional hierarchy equally important to his style of drawing. It took me 20 years to understand that the story is more important than art, because until unless you have a strong narrative, you have a good point of view, you have a good strategy, even when your art is very much thought provoking or immensely beautiful, but until unless your story is very much impressive, it will not create an impression in the minds of the reader. So it's written by the independent Harji biographer Hue Van Opsel. Okay, so the themes in Tibet that we must focus, that the theme of beauty of friendship, or beauty in the friendship in all these people, like the people from the Western world, the Tintin, Captain Haddock, Snowy, obviously the dog, but we need to know that dog Snowy is the best friend to Tintin. Journey and adventure, because it's a journey from the west to the east. From the west, for the Westerners, it is very much unknown, the unknown east at that phase. And the Tibetan Buddhism and the mystic monks. And the last one is very important, that the mysterious mountains, monastery, and the Yeti. So these are the basic themes, the basic topics we must focus on while reading the text. Okay, so I'm just going to the next phase. Here I am just showing you that before I discuss this particular image or particular illustration, I must tell you that uh, see, all these images uh, are taken from National Geographic magazine. You know, this is the monastery and it has been portrayed. See, look at 1 and 2. The 1 is there in Tintin in Tibet. The 2, which is the exact photographs that has been published in National Geographic magazine. So Harji took the ideas of monastery, took the ideas of India, Nepal, the Delhi, Qutub Minar, and all these things, and the China and the Tibetan monastery, all these things from the National Geographic magazine. And the second one is that the monastery and the monk. See, welcome, O travelers, to the monastery of Karyong. And I thought there are 3 of you. And look at this thing, that how this photograph was published and how it has been taken by Harji as a source material and how it has been portrayed in the comics book. The third one, this was published, the sixth, image number 6, that was published in this National Geographic magazine. And when we see that Tintin with his friends is reaching Kathmandu, Harji is portraying, Harji is putting the illustration of that particular monastery. Look at this illustration. Look at the usage of this particular thing. It has been properly taken in this panel. The second one, look at the how Sherpas uses their all these clothings and beddings and all these tents and everything, and how in this picture, picture number 2, it has been reused, it has been illustrated by Harji. And when Captain Haddock fell from this mountain, and it is the mountains, and it is a picture where Himalayan porters and how they Himalayan Sherpas and how they practice this thing, and that has been portrayed on Captain Haddock. So these are the things these are the sources of the inspiration from the National Geographic magazine, and that has been taken by Harji in Tintin in Tibet. But we should know that we don't know that whether Harji had visited Tibet or not, but he has portrayed Tibetan monasteries, Tibetan monks, and the other things, like I will show you, and the Himalayan mountains, the foothills, and everything beautifully in toto. Look at this thing. This is the monks, the carrying the musical instrument, and that has been totally portrayed, presented by Harji in the comic. So these are the things, the sources where from Harji took the source for Tintin. A journey, quest, and adventure. Tintin is a representative of the Western world. Now, if we see that, if we see the people from the Western world, if you see from people from the Western philosophy, they are always keen to know the Eastern mysterious mystic philosophies. So we can say it's a journey of Tintin from the west to the eastern part of the world. And the Chinese monasteries, the Buddhism, the monks, all these things has a kind of as a secret philosophies that we don't know. Even they say that you guys never know that what are the secret things that has been in our culture, in our religion. You can't accept that, you can't know that, you can't understand that. It redefines the journey. The journey redefines the relationship between the Western self and the non-Western other when Tintin sets foot to the east to search for Chang, his friend. Here, under the garb of the quest for Chang, it has been portrayed, or it has been secretively portrayed represented by Harji, that it is also an exploration of Tintin of the eastern part of the world. The Indian part, the Indian philosophy, the Chinese monks, the monasteries, and all these things. And at the same time, if you see that, if you see the monks in Tintin in Tibet, you will find that they they come to know that Tintin has a good heart. That is why the monks are calling him as Great Heart. Why Great Heart? Because everyone in Tibet knew that Chang died due to a plane accident, but only Tintin knew that Chang will definitely be alive, and in the monks also, the highest priest also, they thought that yes, he can alive. So I will talk that later on. Visiting the eastern parts of the world and encountering the various awe-inspiring experiences in the cities of Delhi, Nepal, and Tibet. So while in Delhi, Tintin visited the Qutub Minar. Tintin visited the Red Fort and all these places, and he found that, oh my God, this is beautiful places. So it's an exploration of these places also. It's a kind of, you can say, a kind of a travel, quote unquote, single quote or double quote, you can put it like that. It's travel from the western part to the eastern part. It's an adventurous travel, because until and unless you know that you don't know that where you are going, you don't know the exact the destination where you are going, because Tintin doesn't know where Chang is, where the exact return sorry, where the exact where is the exact place where the plane crashed. So nothing new, is almost a newspaper he found where this was written that the plane crashed. That's it. The Tibetan monastery, the abominable snowman, the Yeti, and the Sherpas, and the blessed lightning. The highest monk, the highest priest, or in the Buddhist monastery, who can see, who can foresee that there is some kind of avalanche in the Himalayan foothill, and he can see from long distance that there are three men. Once the other guys are saying that there are two people, he says that no, there are three men, and one human with a beautiful human, sorry, with a good heart, and he want to explore the man who is very much missing, the man who is named as Chang. And look at these places. I read these places because it's very important. uh, the Great Heart, you have forgotten this. Why? It's a Chang scarf. It's really very kind of you. I see. I see the horn of the yak below the eye, a cave. See, look at the use of the ellipsis, because he's foreseeing everything from his vision. Okay, he's trying to find out Chang, so that in a way it can help Tintin and Captain Haddock, so that they can go easily to the particular place. So I see three ellipses. I see ellipsis. The horn of the yak below the eye, and a cave. I see a boy. This card belongs to him. He's lying on a couch of juniper branches. Impossible. There must be a catch in it. Alas, he is possessed by devils. Now the blessed lightning cannot find out who the devil is. He has a fever. He has a fever means, or Chang has fever. But who is this approaching him? I cannot see clearly. Now I see better. It a photo, a quick. No, not no. No one will ever believe us. Oh, the Migo! Look at the expression, because he has foreseen the shape of that particular Yeti. So it's very much he's very much awestruck with the vision in his mind, the vision of that particular Yeti. So in a way, it's very much kind of alien subject, alien matter for for Tintin and Captain Haddock. So now Harji is portraying these things from his point of view. Look at the thing that Harji is portraying from Western's point of view of the Eastern. The Easterns are having a magic, a charm, a forcing qualities. The monks are very much having a forcing qualities of what is happening on the other side of the hill or the mountain. So he can see that. He can see that, and he is telling Tintin and Captain Haddock about all these things. And later on, Captain Haddock uh, finds that, yeah, it's very much important, and Tintin also finds that it's very much important to reach that particular place to save Chang. Whatever he is saying, he is very much true to the fact that Chang is very much alive, but he is surrounded by some devils. And look at these places, that how the visiting and the mapping, the mystic and the mystery. And why is it so? The adventures toward the unknown knowledge of the Orient. Here you can find that. While taking the flight from Delhi, the guy from the airport, we can say that you can visit the city. So he is pretty much there in the city. He is roaming around. He is meeting the people, and Captain Haddock finds it very much weird to find the Indian tradition, all these things, the Indian culture, and it's very much different from them. And various local colors and the unforeseen experience in the exhibits like Qutub Minar, Red Fort, Jama Masjid, and Rajghat, the memorial of Mahatma Gandhi, and all these things they visit through their journey. This is the exploration of India as well by Tintin. The exotic culture of the monks, the gesture of the grand abode, and the extrasensory vision of the blessed lightning also throw doubts and confusions to the Western travelers, especially within Captain Haddock, who doesn't believe in this Eastern mysticism, because blessed lightning beginning, at the very beginning, finds that there are three men, and the other guys saw two people, but he says that no, there are three men, and the boy has a good heart, the boy has a great heart, and there is a dog with them who is very much snow colored. Why? Eastern spirituality, Taoism, Zen, and Buddhism versus Western logic and enlightenment. So it's a battle. It's a battle between the blessed lightning's understanding, the extrasensory perception, and Captain Haddock's questions about this mysticism. And why Tintin, why Harje was very much keen to use this kind of mysticism in that, because at the very around 1960s or in 1950s, in Harje's biography, it has been written that Harje was very much attached to these philosophies, the philosophies of the other part of the world, like in US right now, the philosophy, the Hinduism, not the other politics of Hinduism, the Hinduism as a philosophy that they want to explore right now. And they find that the Hinduism or the Buddhism or the Buddhist monks, all these cultures has this humility in their philosophy, has the devotion in their philosophy, whereas the Western logic is very much aggressive, is very much attacking, is very much having some kind of colonial power. That is what it is all about. And whereas the spirituality, the spiritual devotion, all these things are very much in eastern part of the world, the Oriental philosophies. If you read the passage to India, you will find the same thing. The mystery is unraveled through the journey and ingrained with the deep-seated colors and expressions. So in one scene, I tell you what happens. In one scene, Captain Haddock find something that has been there, and he thought that this is some kind of fruit that is getting dried under the sun. So he asked the man that what it is. He said that it's fruit. So he tried to taste it, and it was unfortunately the red pepper. The red pepper, it was they were putting that under the sun to make it dry, but unfortunately Captain Haddock tasted that, and it was a blunder for him. So another thing is that the encountering the Yeti. So these are the things. If I can divide Tintin in Tibet into three sections. The first section is that the western part of the western part. The second part is the Tintin and his attachment to those Buddhist monastery. And the last part is very important: the encountering the Yeti. The Tharki says, and other guys are saying that in the cold days where there is some snowfall, the Yeti comes and drinks the beer and then goes away. So it is very much important to know that the existence of Yeti is there in the minds of the people in the Himalayan hotels. And the next day, it was told by the other guys, the Sherpas, at night. And the next morning, Captain Haddock didn't find the bottle of beer. He said that I just put it there only at the midnight, and oh my God, it's gone. And he found the bottle at a distant place, and it's there. Some portion of beer is there, but it is considered that the Yeti came at night and took the beer bottle. So the encountering the Yeti is first that it's considered as the abominable snowman. Why it is abominable? Because in Buddhist monastery, the monk, the blessed enlightened, says that it's a devil. It's the devil because they can't face this abominable snowman. They can't face the devil. That's why it's called as the abominable snowman. It is living in the snow. Another source of mystery, and the prime quest ends with it. So they saw the figure of the Yeti with the binocular, but they didn't face the Yeti. And it's a prime quest is obviously Chang, but at the same time the prime quest was another the exploration of the adventure of finding Yeti. The humanitarian aspect of Yeti to add the sense of wonder. What is that? That the Yeti could have killed Chan, but on the other side, it has some humanitarian values. That the Chang, who is the only survivor of this plane crash, he has been taken away and he has been nursed by the Yeti. So Yeti has the sense of treating someone with his affection. So it's kind of human approach that has been portrayed, that has been put together in Yeti by Harji. It is doubtful whether Tintin actually sees him or the character has been created deliberately by the author to continue the mystery lying beneath the Himalayan foothills. Because at last he found Chang, but he didn't get the trace of that particular Yeti. He saw with the binocular a figure like thing like it, but he was very much confused whether it is the Yeti or not. And the last point is very important. The Yeti sums up what the traveler looks like in a journey, the thrill, and most importantly, the excitement. Now, the last section, what is that? The post-colonial gaze in Tata Otibe. Tintin, a representative of the Western world and an epitome of humanitarian values. So Tintin here is not only exploring the Eastern world, and he's a representative of the Western world. We all know the colonial British, the colonial European countries. They settled their colonies in the eastern part of the Asia, like in Nepal, Bhutan, all these places, all together in India, better to say. So they have always a keen attention to find out the mystery in China, in Nepal, in Bhutan, and in India as well. So Tintin is no one but a representative of the Western world who is exploring the Eastern world, and he has the humanitarian values so that we can be empathize. That he can empathize the Eastern part. The and Chang is the representative of this Eastern world. Redefines the relationship between the Western self and the non-Western others. So if we focus on the post-colonial theory, that we know the selfing and the othering. So once they call themselves self, and they call the others, the non-whites or the non-Westerns, as the others. In that case, we we are the very much others, and they are very much self. On one hand, this is the representation. Now, once Tintin reaches Tibet, it is the vice versa. It is that the Eastern self and the non-Western others. Here you can find that here you can find that yeah, here you can find that the blazed lightning on the right side. You can see here it is fine. You can find that welcome, O travelers, to the monastery of February. But I thought there were three of you. So the blessed lightning comes to know from his vision that there are three men who have come to this world, to this eastern world, and while they ask that how do you know this, that we have come here, blessed lightning said that you are from the western world, so you can't understand that how we get the vision. So it's a something very much the eastern world, the western world, and the representation of the vice versa, because they are in the eastern world, whereas we call ourselves self, and the other part of the world as the other. So they are the other. We are othering them, and we are making ourselves as the quote unquote self. Another thing is that the comic nurtures an appeal towards foregrounding the otherness. So while they say that these monasteries, these monks, and all these places have some kind of mysticism, the vision, and all these things related to the monasteries, while we also portray, and the comics, this comics also portrays the otherness on the other hand, the otherness of the otherly world, the otherness, the other people from the other world. So these are the things, the foregrounding of the otherness before the audience, exploring the non-Western other and domesticating and imbibing the otherness of Tibet, Nepal, and Himalayan foothills. So all these things that just I discussed. Another thing is that anthropocentric framework between this animal and human being, the relationship between Yeti and Chan. Now, look at the anthropocentric framework that has been attributed in Tintin Tibet, like we have seen friendship between the Yeti and Chan. On the other side, you can find the friendship between the Snowy, the dog, and Tintin. And another side, you can find that Captain Haddock has also an affinity towards this Snowy, the dog. So all this, the friendship between this animal world and the human being has been attributed in these I mean animals, and the human qualities are also attributed upon the Yeti. It is considered as, it is also considered as a mystic devil like Yeti. It has the the human qualities like mercy. It has the human qualities like the caregiver to Chan. So all these things comes under the post-colonial gaze, the gaze the Western world sees us, the gaze through which the western part of the world who considered as the sorry, the Western world who considered as themselves as a self, they are seeing that this can be there in the Eastern world. The Yeti is given a subjective position at the end of the narrative, where the animal is endowed with pathos and sentiment that I just discussed just 2-3 slides back. And otherness lies in the appearance of the monks of the Tibetan monastery, the main priest, and the Sherpas of the Nepal. So the othering of these people from the Western world, it lies in the appearance of the monks, because there are several times like when the avalanche was there, when they reached the monastery, and later on when the blessed lightning attempted to give the yellow scarf of Chang to Tintin. There also he found that some kind of vision and some kind of things, mystic things, better to say, there with the monks and the monster people. And here, thanks a lot. If I'm not, I think I just finished this thing within the precious time, and I'm just stopping the sharing. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya. Thank you very much for your effective, fruitful, and informative session.
Thank you.
Dr. Bhattacharya has explained his viewpoint in a very lucid and prolific way through graphic presentation. He has very nicely pointed out the colonial, post-colonial, Western, non-Western dichotomy in his discussion. It seems that we have been, in a sense, hypnotized by his charming lecture, and for at least for half an hour, he has been able to take us to the mystic East, the exotic land of Tibet. And in addition to having fun, we, the listeners, have been able to delve deep into the mysterious Tibetan wonderlands. However, no discussion is complete without questions. That's why I would like to request Priya Midde, Department of English of our college, to conduct the interactive session and to present the questions on behalf of the participants to Dr. Bhattacharya. Priya, please proceed.
Hello, sir. I hope I'm audible and visible.
It's okay, it's okay. Carry on.
Audible.
Priya, carry on, carry on.
Professor, yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, MA, sir, and Dr. Partha Bhattacharya for your enjoyable, enriching, as well as interesting lecture. We have all gained some new and valuable perspectives in this about this interesting and very popular text written by Harji, that is Tintin in Tibet. And so here I will posit some of the questions that have been posted by the participants in the chat box. So first question is, how are illustrated children's books referred to as? When we study the images and textual part of such children's books to interpret, should they correlate? Why are there gaps sometimes? This question has been asked by Smita VK.
Okay, can you please repeat the question, because there are some technical glitches, that's why I couldn't hear properly. Can you please repeat?
Okay, I shall repeat it once again. Absolutely, I shall repeat it once again. The question is, how are illustrated children's books referred to as? When we study the images and textual part of such children's books to interpret, should they correlate? Why are there gaps sometimes?
Yeah, we should see once while reading the comics, we should correlate the other aspects, other perspectives that has been drawn in the panel. And while reading that, we must know that not only there are so many thinkings that was going while illustrating the particular text. So we must relate and we must find out that what are the probable meanings, what are the probable things that are there within these comics pages. Number one. Number two is that sometimes the comics books are called as the books for the children, but we must know that there may be something other on the other side of the pages. There may be something on the other side of the panels. That's why while reading the panels, you must while reading the text in the comics pages, we must focus on the panels as well. The sequentiality of the panels, the possibility of those panels, the other possible meanings of those panels. Not only the meanings are coming from the very text that has been found in the speech bubbles or thought bubbles like that. No, not like that. We must focus also on those images that has been very much expressive, and we must relate one to one. We must not we must not find the text only portion. No, not like that. We must find the text as well as the text which is supported by that particular image. So in a way, we should go hand in hand and find the probable meanings in this text, in this comics panels. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question has been asked by Ginny Kennedy. She is a student, bachelor's degree student of English literature from All Saints College, Trivandrum, Kerala. How far does comic studies create an impact on society?
And
And how far does comic studies create an impact on society?
oh my God, it's a beautiful question. Thank you for the question. Because see, I tell you that it has a history. It has a long history all over the world. First of all, I just tell you small history because due to the time constant, because I can talk about like 2 hours on this topic only. See, there was the DC Marvel superhero comics. We all know that, right? And we know that the publication houses and in US, and while the other artists who are not very much coming to the forefront in the comics industry, they want to find out some other themes that is not related to the superhero comics, so that they find that why we should not portray our own lives, the traumatic lives, like autobiography, biography, history, um, anything that has very much relation with the society. So they try to portray, and those people are called as the underground artists, quote unquote underground artists. Those people who are not coming too much to the highlighting situation, highlighting point. Those are not highlighted in the society of the artists, but they continue their artistry. They continue illustrating their lives, the history, the biography, autobiography, society, everything. And why they are portraying in comics media? Because comics can catch the mind of all the readers. It has been said by Professor Paul Gravett, Hilary Shute, and Ripunka, and so many others, comics research and comics practitioners, that comics is actually taking the attention of the reader. While you read the textbook, you read that text only, which can be very much monotonous sometimes, which can be boring sometimes. So while studying the society, if we can represent the society in comics book, it will help the readers to understand more powerfully, more impactfully, and the influence it can carry within the minds of the readers, in the background of the mind of the reader while reading it. It will bear a long impression. It will have some long standing influence. It will create a beautiful experience of the readers as well, because they are seeing the pictures at the same time they are reading the text at the same time. So comics is very much necessary while studying the society. Yes, absolutely. And thank you for the question.
The next question, it has been asked by Kanad Malik of Srirampur College. He's a student. The question is, what is the difference between comics and graphic novels? Which category does Tintin in Tibet belong to?
Okay. See, while we say that graphic novel, if we go for the cut to gut point, graphic novel is nothing but the comics itself. It's comics. If we follow the Bengal comics researchers, or the comics practitioners from Bengal, you can find Pinaki De, you can find Dev Kumar Moitro, you can find Sharbojit Sen, you can find so many people from Jadavpur, Abhijit Gupta, and so many people are there. They call it long form. If you want to find it, why it is we are not calling it graphic novel. We can call it the long form comics. The comics in volume, like we find the comics books like 20 pages, 25 pages, 30 pages. But if we find a comics book in like 150 pages, 200 pages, we call it a long form comics or graphic narrative. We do not use the graphic, we use the word graphic novel because it's a business centric term, nothing other than that. Like epistolary novel you read, like detective novel you read, it's a graphic novel you read, that's it. But once you are a scholar, once you become a scholar of literary studies, once you become a scholar, a researcher like that, you will find that the scholars, the researchers of our generation, or the generation of the immediate our immediate predecessors in 1990s, 19 first decade of the 2000, they call it that we should not use the term graphic novel. We can use the word graphic narrative, but we must refrain from using the word graphic novel. And there is no such cut-to-cut difference between the graphic novel and comics. Yeah, there is nothing. But once you find that the comics pages, the medium is called comics, and the book is, you can call it the long form comics, or maybe the graphic narrative. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for your answer. There is another question by Ritoban Bhattacharya. He's a PhD scholar from Rabindra Bharati University. If the gutter is seen as a negative space, reinforcing the positive spaces, what role does negative space play in such pages where there is only one single enlarged image in the page as found in Tintin?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. Thank you. See, there are so many explanations of gutter. I just talk about the gutter only. There are so many explanations of the gutter. Since there are some that the space is very explanatory. You can explain the space, explain the gutter from different perspectives. Like if you can focus on Tintin in Tibet and the gutters, you can find that there are so many transformation of the panels as well as the transformation of the time. Within the shift of this time, they use this gutter. Another thing is that once you have the different visions, while this blessed lightning having the visions, they are using the gutter. But the gutter is nothing other, I mean, the gutter is not of the other categories. It's the same gutter that has been used earlier also in the book. So it has connotations, but you need to know that what are the probable explanation of that particular gutter. See, the meaning of gutter is always fluid. It's the reader who can decide, is it a negative space or a positive space which is creating the another part of the panel or another part of the graphic narrative. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. There's another question which has been posted by Nina Anthony from MIT University, Noida. The question goes like this. Do you think comics are losing its popularity with the rise in graphic novels, or are both the categories struggling to gain popularity in the literary canon?
Yeah, beautiful question. Yes, yes. I tell you one thing that within the use of the word graphic novel and within the some prejudiced publication houses, I should sound little bit harsh here. Some prejudiced publication houses, those houses who do not or who do not consider the artist who are very much having their individual classic artistry. They do not consider as very much well that can be, they say that it cannot be well sold in the market. They want to find someone who can be sold. So there is some kind of tussle between the aesthetic art and the market. Okay, so in a way in India, what happened in USA in the 1970s, the artists who are very much focusing on the autobiographical element, I'm talking about the women artists in the 1970s, 1980s, who are very much focused or who were very much focusing on the autobiographical or the biographical element, they were barred from the publication houses for getting published. So they used to use the university publication published pamphlet to make their art published in the pamphlets. So in a way, it is seen in India too. The most of the not so much renowned artists, they find the pages of Instagram, they find to they find it very much easy to post it there and to make an announcement to the world that yeah, we are also the artists, but we do not get that much of attention from the publishing industries. Yeah, this is very much harsh. We know that because we know Amrita Patil, but we don't know Duty Mittal. This is where the difference between the the comics industry and the individualistic artist in our country. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for your answer. One last question, which is
Sure.
from our assistant professor of the Department of Syamaprasad College, of the Department of English from Syamaprasad College. She is Damini Ray. Her question is, do you think the encounter with the Yeti is an attempt to demystify a prominent Tibetan mythical figure by Western heroes?
Yes, beautiful. Thank you. Thanks a lot for this question. See, while Harji is still there, Harji is still living. I mean, sorry, was still living there and wrote this. I mean, illustrated these panels and created this character Yeti, and it's an attempt to demystify the mysticism of this Buddhist monastery or these Himalayan foothills. We know that the imaginary animal, the imaginary animal is Yeti is there, but we don't know the existence of it. But here here Harji is putting Yeti at the very center of the novel as a figure, and at the same time, he is portraying Yeti having the humanistic and the human, I mean, the attitude or the self and the mercy, the part, the caregiver, all these senses and sensibilities are very much there in the Yeti. So in a way, it's an attempt by the Westerners to demystify the Eastern's concept of this kind of mysticism.
Okay, sir. Thank you,
Okay.
sir. I close this interactive session and I pass on the discussion to Professor Abdul Selim. Sir, please take over the charge.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you very much. And once again, lots of thanks to Dr. Bhattacharya. Thank you for your wonderful clarification. And we hope that you will not deprive us if we invite you for our future programs. Thank you, Bhattacharya. Once again, thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Now, let us begin our second session. I welcome Ms. Shakshi Dogra, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Gargi College, Delhi. And I would like to hand over microphone to Damini Ray, Joint Convener of today's webinar, to moderate the second session. Damini, please proceed.
Thank you, Dr. Salim, and thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, for an extremely interesting lecture. We'll now move on to our second session, which will be on Alice. So the wonderful thing about both the Alice and the Tintin stories is that though they have been crafted with a young readership in mind, the attention to detail, the subtleties in the characters and in narrative style, the marvelous humor and the often complex thematic undercurrents are all extremely stimulating for adult readers as well. For the uninitiated, Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass are exercises in whimsy and fancy, and at certain parts even nonsense. But Carroll, being a mathematician and a scholar, was not interested in eliminating reason and rationality from his writings, but in subverting them and in playing with them. The Alice stories contain innumerable mathematical puzzles, language games, wordplay, references, acrostics, philosophical musings, logic, and social satire. Alice has influenced such disparate artists as Walt Disney and Salvador Dali. Both Tintin and Alice happen to fall into many adventures, and no matter how different their adventures are from one another, it is their insatiable curiosity and their openness to the strange, the different, and the other that contribute to their enduring appeal. Our second session is on the subversive potential of Wonderland in Through the Looking Glass. So without further ado, I'd like to formally introduce our second speaker for this session, Ms. Sakshi Dogra. Ms. Dogra currently teaches English Literature and Language at Gargi College, which is affiliated under the University of Delhi as an assistant professor. She completed her MPhil research titled Helping Self or Selling Help, critically analyzing the phenomenon of self-help books and groups in 2013 from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Her dissertation posited that in our late modern society, popular consumption practices such as the reading of self-help books and participation in new religious groups is an instance of effective labor. She is currently pursuing PhD research titled Food, Feelings and Flavors, a study of contemporary Indian writing in English on food, wherein she seeks to bring out a synthesis of affect and taste through an analysis of a different and indispensable consumption practice of ingesting food. She is invested in the study of emotions and feelings, youth cultures, popular fiction, literary taste, and theories of self and subjectivity. Ms. Dogra has been teaching Through the Looking Glass at Gargi College as part of the curriculum. Welcome, Ms. Dogra. Please go ahead with your lecture. Sakshi?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm sorry, we are all new to this
No, it's
technological
absolutely fine.
science fiction universe that we have found ourselves in.
Absolutely.
But one has to make the most of it. Thank you so much for introducing the text the way you did. I mean, my God, now I feel that you built it up, and what I say is perhaps not going to do justice to that very well-rounded introduction. In fact, thank you so much. I mean, for having me over, for thinking of me as someone who would like to do this. My talk is, of course, titled The Subversive Potential of Wonderland in Through the Looking Glass. And that's the text that I will be looking at. Also, I mean, it's true that, when one talks about Lewis Carroll, one has to refer to, this, he's a mathematician, he's a philosopher. However, I'm going to look at, the text as children's fiction. The thing with Through the Looking Glass is that what Carroll is leaving open for us is almost like a dare. He's daring us to make sense of this text, and the moment that we start making sense of this text, he's telling us, oh gotcha, you are the one I am satirizing. So the reader is always being satirized the moment that the reader starts making sense of a text like that. However, we are going to try nonetheless. I'm going to read this text keeping in mind the long popularity that it has had across time and spaces. I'm going to begin by talking about childhood. When did the category of childhood as such came into being? I'm going to talk a little, very little. I'm just going to touch upon Victorian England, the rise of literacy, and the kind of children's fiction, children's literature that was being written then. And of course, lastly, I'm going to look at how Carroll then subverts all these, or this kind of moral education that was being imparted in children's fiction through children's literature that was being written during the Victorian age. To begin, when one tends to think of childhood, we think of it as a material, as a biological reality, and there is no denying that it is all of that. However, every child is born into a social world. Every child is born into a linguistic world. Every child is born into a gendered world. Every child is born into an adult world. the concept of child then, the very idea of child then, concerns an embodied individual who is defined as non-adult. While the notion of childhood is a more general and abstract term, it's used to refer to the status that is ascribed by adults to those who are not adults. There is no denying that this notion of childhood has, of course, varied across time periods. The term child connotes not just physiological immaturity, the term child connotes powerlessness, the term child connotes inferiority. So the term child, of course, connotes not just physiological immaturity, but also dependency, powerlessness, and inferiority. Childhood, on the other hand, it focuses on the general state of being a child. Childhood does not refer to an individual child, but in fact suggests this existence of a distinct, this existence of a separate, of a fundamentally different social group or category. Childhood is always understood in a binary relationship with adulthood. Childhood as a phase, as a social group, as a demographic, as a category, that stands in direct contrast, in polar opposition to, of course, adulthood. Now, Philip Aries' book called Centuries of Childhood, a social history of family life, is a very interesting foray into this social history of childhood. He looks at when did childhood come into being, when did the category of the child come into being, when did it come into being as a socially and historically constructed social group. And he says that the idea of childhood, he's a social historian, and of course he says that the idea of childhood is constructed in nature. It is constructed socially, it is constructed historically, meaning it varies from time to time, it varies from one place to another place, and it's not biologically given. It's not a category, it's not a period, it's not a social group that is biologically given or that is fundamentally natural. Now, he argues that in the Middle Ages, children mixed freely with adults. He says that in stark contrast to modern European society, adults in the Middle Ages were less concerned with the development of children. Adults in the Middle Ages were far less concerned with the well being of children. Children were, in fact, seen as little adults, uh, and never thought of them as, and they were never thought of as a distinct social group. However, from early 15th century, due to socio-economic changes, due to growth of capitalism, due to rise of bourgeoisie, and consequent new ideas and ideals about family and family life, this category of the child, this period of childhood, in fact transformed. And I don't want to dwell on this history more. Otherwise, I mean, I fear that we will never quite reach the text. I mean, Centuries of Childhood was first published in French in 1960, then in English in 1962, and is a thoroughly enjoyable text, and also a very fascinating exploration of this socially and historically constructed nature of childhood. And I strongly, I mean, recommend that we all, I mean, I'm sure we've all read it, but those of us who haven't must, read it. It's a fascinating story. Now, to cut to 19th century, this is when schooling became a universal inspiration, keeping with the model of development, keeping with the model of progress that the Victorians espoused. The publication of children's literature in the 19th century, the publication of children's literature in the Victorian age became immensely widespread because of the rise of literacy rates. Now, it's interesting to interesting to see what did these texts really look like. What did these texts that were meant for children, the implied child, what kind of education, or what kind of entertainment did these texts impart. Now, these texts were aimed at the moral education of the children. It was the moral socialization of the child. It was the moral socialization of the child. It was the imparting of moral values. It was the moral socialization of children. It was the imparting of moral values that was considered the central intent of these writings. The main intent, the main aim behind these writings was not quite to stimulate thoughts or ideas, but instead to impart moral values. This is what was considered ideal education. Jan B. Gordon sort of speaks about Rossetti's children's book. Now, Rossetti's children's book is called Speaking Likeness. It's called Speaking Likeness. It was published in 1874. And it's a text that depicts the evil of antisocial behavior. So it's almost like a warning. It's a warning that's issued to children. Don't be like this, else you punishment will be meted out to you in this other way. The book goes something like this. It's about Flora. She's the heroine who ruins her birthday party, and in the forest finds another party. Uh, at this other party in the forest, there are grotesque children. There is a domineering birthday queen, and I think we can already look at certain parallels between Rossetti's children's book and, of course, what Carroll would go on to write in Through the Looking Glass. And there's this domineering birthday queen who does not let Flora eat food, and Flora, of course, wakes up screaming. The moral of the story, of course, is something like this, that selfishness and haughtiness must be condemned. They do not do anyone any good. Similarly, Charles Kingsley's story, The Water Babies, written in 1863, also underscores the educative value of punishment. And we know how often Carroll discusses punishment in Through the Looking Glass. Charles Kingsley's The Water Babies also, it underscores the educative value of punishment. The text follows this Cinderella pattern almost. The plot lines in these texts were always linear. The plot lines in these texts were always linear, something for us to contrast in through the looking glass. There is a complete disavowal of linearity in the text. The plot lines, written in these children fiction, which was meant for moral socialization of the children, involved a journey. It involved a journey from naughtiness to goodness. These texts, the plot line involved a journey from a pilgrimage, almost from transgression to redemption. That is what these texts look like. I mean, it's a journey, it was a pilgrimage from naughtiness to goodness, from transgression to redemption. And the final conclusion of these stories was a child who had, after following this journey, this linear journey, this child who had then become an adult. Interestingly, through the looking glass doesn't adhere to this conspicuously moral purpose. There is just absolutely no moral purpose at the heart of that novel or the heart of that story. One can construe the text as didactic, but it doesn't have any commitment. The text does not commit, it doesn't have any commitment, it doesn't commit to any kind of moral education. And the text doesn't commit to any kind of moral education. In fact, like Damini pointed out when she introduced the text, it's almost a certain kind of philosophical inquiry. If we were to not look at the text as children's fiction, we would look at the text as a philosophical inquiry into the nature of language and into the nature of reality. Now, all this is done, this kind of disavowal of any commitment to moral education, this kind of construction of the text as a philosophical inquiry into the limits of language, into the limits of reality, text. And that, of course, leads us to the question, what is nonsense? T.S. Eliot says that nonsense always exists in relation to sense. If we don't have a preconceived idea of sense, nonsense cannot exist. I mean, it will always exist. We will only be able to fathom, we will only be able to perceive, observe, make sense of nonsense only in relation to sense. He also says that nonsense exists in relation to as well as a comment on sense. So not only does it exist in relation to sense, nonsense is also a commentary on sense. What do I mean, or what does he mean when he says it's a commentary on sense? It's a commentary on the provisional nature. It's a commentary on the provisional nature of sense. It's a commentary on the tentative, temporary nature of sense. Very often, nonsense is in fact a parody of sense. Very often, nonsense is in fact a parody of sense. Literary nonsense, which is a play on words, which is an abundance of puns, neologism, riddles, jokes. So this literary nonsense, in fact, so this literary nonsense, in fact, goes a step further, and it goes on to question established linguistic and literary conventions. For instance, in the poem Jabberwocky, there is a use of a lot of nonsense words. There is also an employment of a lot of portmanteau words. Two words come together and sort of make a new word and a new meaning. So there is also an employment of a lot of portmanteau words. However, even though these words are nonsense, even though these words are new, we do know what's happening in the poem. The poem does produce meaning nonetheless. It's a case of nonsense producing sense. Paul Jennings says that nonsense involves the essential ability, and I find that definition very interesting and pretty representative, in fact. Paul Jennings says that nonsense involves the essential ability to ask what if, agar, to ask what if. It's nonsense involves an ability to test the validity of things as they are they really valid, or or the way we know things, is it just another game? That definition I find very interesting. That definition I find very stimulating. The idea that, you know, nonsense involves this essential ability to ask what if. And in the very first chapter in the text, in through the looking glass, the very first chapter, which is called Looking Glass House, when Alice says, let's pretend, and she says it like an incantation. The moment that she says let's pretend, she's also asking the question, what if? What if this mirror could become like a mist? What if this mirror were a portal to another reality? So this, she almost opens this world of nonsense. So Alice says, let's pretend. She says it like an incantation, and she opens the portal to an inverted reality. It's the reality beyond the mirror. It's the reality behind the mirror, which means everything that is right here becomes left and wrong there. Everything in Through the Looking Glass world is inverted. The in it's an inverted reality. By virtue of being an inverted reality, it is also a reality that's nonsense in nature. It doesn't make any sense. So it's an inverted reality. It's a reality that is nonsensical. It's a reality made of nonsense. And one has to remember that nonsense is like a game. It's like a game of cards. It's like a game of chess. And I think that will again ring a bell. And just to open, you know, that thought, I don't know if, you know, if how far, you know, we'll reach. It's like a game of cards. It's like a game of chess. It's like a game of, I don't know, the board games that we have, the game of Ludo. It's like a game of snakes and ladders. It's like the game called life. It's a game which has its own rules. And what are these rules? These rules, of course, are an inversion of the rules that one finds in the real, the Victorian world. So nonsense, it's like a game. It has its own rule. It has its own rules. And in this case of Through the Looking Glass, the rules are, of course, inverted. Nonsense is like a system. It's, of course, like a system in which words will attain their meaning. It's like a system in which words attain their meaning through divergence, through moving away from, through diverting from the existing language system. So all words will never follow through, or words will never confined will never be confined to literary conventions or established linguistic conventions that we are comfortable with. So this nonsense, so it's a system in which words attain their meaning. And attain their meaning how? Attain their meaning by, of course, diverging, by, of course, diverting from the existing language system, by diverting from established linguistic conventions. So, for example, in the Looking Glass world, you have to walk backwards to get somewhere. You have to run very fast to stay in the same place. These are all inversions of the reality that we encounter in our everyday world. And the sheer potential, I mean, the sheer potential of displaying a reality, a world that is behind the mirror, that is behind the looking glass, the sheer potential of an inverted reality. In fact, interestingly, in Through the Looking Glass, I mean, it's not just language that goes for a toss. rules of politeness, rules of civility, they all go for a toss. I mean, the rules of politeness, rules of civility seem to not apply. In chapter 2, the Garden of Live Flowers, we see how the flowers insult and ridicule and criticize Alice, who is immensely shocked at their discourteous behavior. This is not the reality that she's used to. This inverted reality is, in fact, it's a linguistic and a social chaos. You know, it's a completely linguistic and social chaos. Language is in excess. Rules of politeness, civility don't apply. So it's a linguistic and social chaos. But it isn't quite a chaos, is it now? But it isn't quite a chaos, is it now? It isn't quite a chaos because it has its own rules of language. It has its own rules of sociality. Yeah? And what are these rules of language? What are these rules of sociality? They are all inversions of the rules and practices of the Victorian world that Alice is growing up in, that Alice has grown up in till this point where she's 7.5 years old. In fact, when Alice meets the Red Queen in the same chapter, in chapter 2, the Garden of Life Flowers, the Red Queen's opening remarks to her are, "Where do you come from? And where are you going? Look up, speak nicely, don't twiddle your fingers all at the same time." Soon afterwards, reprimanding Alice, soon afterwards, reproaching Alice in this fashion. The Red Queen goes on to tell her that you must curtsy while you are thinking what to say. It saves time. Every time we encounter Red Queen, there is always a barrage of instructions and a catalog of advices, a catalog of niceties that she's hurling at Alice every time we encounter her. The Red Queen's tone throughout is immensely offensive. She's not polite. She's not civil. She does not quite have manners that Alice is being trained to adopt. The Red Queen's tone throughout is immensely offensive. It's very offensive. In fact, the Red Queen has been seen as an essence of all governesses. This is how the governesses in the Victorian, world, in the Victorian age, would bring up young girls. Look up, speak nicely, don't twiddle your fingers, curtsy while you are thinking it. You must learn to save time, etc., etc. So she's almost this kind of concentrated and condensed version of the governesses, in Victorian, in Victorian England, in Victorian age. In fact, it's not just the Red Queen. Most of the characters who Alice encounters are rather rude. They are disrespectful. They are ill-mannered. And it seems that there is a lack of basic social etiquettes in Through the Looking Glass world. After all, this is a world that is a linguistic and social chaos. This kind of preoccupation, of inversion of rules of politeness, this kind of preoccupation of rules of politeness, rules of social etiquettes, this kind of preoccupation with rules of civility, in fact, continues throughout the text. I mean, turning into a full-blown fallout when we reach, the close of the novel. I mean, for instance, in chapter 4, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, which is a nursery rhyme, and they are mirror images, form of each other, which is why one of them extends a right hand and the other one extends a left hand for handshake. And Alice grabs hold, and before she knows, they are all dancing. Now, when they stop, Alice finds that she's in a very awkward place, and the text tells us that she finds herself in an awkward place because Alice didn't know how to begin conversation with people she had just been dancing with. It would never do to say, "How do you do now?" We seem to have got beyond that somehow. So, in this mirror world, even etiquettes are are reversed, huh? Where, of course, politeness was the catchphrase. It is everyone's rude. Rudeness is the catchphrase. Instead of meeting people, asking them, "How do you do?" "Oh, I'm fine. Let's begin a friendship. Let's all dance together." Even that reality, of course, has become inverted. She grabs Tweedledee and Tweedledum's hands, starts dancing, and then they stop, and then she's awkward because, well, she's still used to the rules of etiquettes in her Victorian reality. So it's a mirror world. Even etiquettes are, of course, reversed. And what is highlighted in this through the looking glass world then is the sheer inefficacy. What is underscored, what is highlighted, what is brought to the forefront is this kind of sheer inefficacy of manners in this adventurous world. Manners just don't apply. Politeness, civility, etiquettes, they just don't apply in this adventurous world. In fact, in the same chapter, if we look at, the poem, the song, Walrus and the Carpenter, for instance, it's a completely morally absurd and ambiguous universe that song presents to us, huh? Walrus and the Carpenter. I mean, a completely morally absurd, a completely ambiguous universe that is presented to us. And in fact, if all of us go, back to our childhood, and we think of, the kind of stories that we read, stories of stories for children, stories of childhood always had a moral. There was always a moral at the end of it. However, if you look at Walrus and the Carpenter, there is no moral at the end of it. I mean, Alice doesn't know what to say except to say that, well, the Walrus and the Carpenter, they are both very unpleasant. So there is no moral that, okay, this is a good guy and this is a bad guy. That is how we can differentiate between them. But there isn't any moral here. So we have songs in the text about eating animals, which is in itself very interesting because instead of befriending animals, which one would expect to find in a children's story, in children's fiction, in children's literature, instead of befriending animals, Alice is actually shown as holding long arguments with them. So this is a morally absurd and ambiguous, universe that we encounter in Through the Looking Glass. In fact, to sort of to look at the text in terms of structure, if one looks at, chapter 4 and chapter 6, not only are Tweedledee and Tweedledum and Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, etc., not only are they nursery rhymes, this nursery rhymes that must be such an immediate part of Alice's experience, of growing up. These chapters also function like nursery rhymes, and in that sense, we get to observe the power of words. We get to observe the power of language, in these chapters. In fact, in the entire text, Tweedledum, Tweedledee, Humpty Dumpty are all imprisoned, in the words of their nursery rhyme. They are doomed to repeat the words of their rhyme. They can't do anything out of the words that have already written them. In fact, these characters, they almost seem like a picture from an infantile dream. And language, words, such an important theme in the text. I mean, whether it is the use of puns, for example, the pun on the word bark, so a tree has a bark and the bark can bark, or the pun on the word bow wow. In fact, if you look at Humpty Dumpty, he imposes his personal discipline on words. So this kind of preoccupation with language, this preoccupation with words is something that we find throughout the text. And while analyzing the poem Jabberwocky, Humpty Dumpty says that the word brillick means 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the time when you start broiling things for dinner. And 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 this kind of there is this kind of convention that exists, like I already pointed out, there is this kind of convention that exists in the text, where existent set of words can determine pattern of events. Humpty Dumpty is, after all, a nursery rhyme. It's an existent set of words, and it determines how the plot will work. It determines what will become of Humpty Dumpty. Similarly, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, it's a nursery rhyme. It's an existent set of words. It's a nursery poem that already exists, and of course it determines the pattern of events. It determines what's going to happen in the life of Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Carroll is preoccupied. He's preoccupied with the excess of language. When language starts overflowing, he's of course preoccupied with the excess of language. When language starts meaning more than in should when language starts meaning more than it should, when words start meaning more than what they are designated to mean. I mean, after all, what are puns? What is a pun? After all, what are riddles? What are jokes? These are all fissures. These are all, of course, fissures where language means more than it should, than it rationally should. In a lot of ways, then what Carroll is critiquing is reason, is rationality, is sense. I mean, uh, and of course, what he's able to do, I mean, to only look at through the looking glass, as children's fiction, to only look at through the looking glass as children's literature. The fact that the text ends with Alice wildly shaking her kitten. So she shakes her kitten, or she shakes the Red Queen, and the Red Queen then metamorphosizes back into her kitten. In fact, gives us a wish fulfillment. It's a child. It's a child who is exercising her wish fulfillment. It's the wish fulfillment of the ultimate kind. What Alice is doing is that this world of lessons, this world of governesses, by shaking it, by shaking the Red Queen, who is this concentrated essence of all governesses, she's able to fulfill her wish. What is her wish? Of course, to reduce this terrifying adult world, this to reduce this terrifying adult world that is made of governesses, that is made of, this is a world of lessons, a world that is made of nursery rhymes that one has to memorize, a world that is made of etiquettes, manners, a world that is made of injunctions to be polite, cordial, coy. What she does, of course, is that, and this is what Carroll also does, by treating this entire world of lessons, of governesses, with a certain kind of playfulness. This world is reduced from a terrifying place to an absurdity, and it's an absurd world that is manageable. What Carroll is then giving to the readers is not an adult's view of childhood. This is not how adults see children or see childhood, but instead, what he's giving us through his text is a child's view of adulthood. this adult world, this adult regime, which seems like a terrifying place that's made of lessons and mugging up nursery rhymes and governesses and these injunctions to behave oneself, these injunctions to be civil, to be polite, etc., etc. What he's giving to us then is this child's view of adulthood, this kind of absurdity that, of course, adulthood is. And what does Alice do with this world? He, of course, she of course shakes it into reducing it, metamorphosizing it into a kitten. It's a wish fulfillment of the ultimate kind that she's exercising, giving us a world. At the end of the day, Carol is giving us a world where, the fabric of social life and the fabric of language are completely torn. Politeness, civility, etiquettes, reason, rationality, linguistic conventions, the fabric of our social life, the fabric of language, the fabric of adult life is completely torn. And what triumphs, of course, is subversion. And that is the text that, of course, we encounter. That's, I think, that's all that I want to say. I don't know if, yeah, that.
Thank you so much, Sakshi. You offered a very insightful look into the category of the child and what it entails, how it is evolved. And I particularly enjoyed your exploration of how nonsense often acts as a means of challenging and even questioning existing systems. So that was an extremely interesting take on nonsense, especially literary nonsense. So we've received a very enthusiastic response from our participants. They have put forward a lot of questions. So I'll request Ms. Onurima Paul to present a few of the questions from the participants. Onurima?
Yes. Thanks, Damini. Thank you, Professor Sakshi Dogra, for your wonderful discussion. It was a real pleasure listening to your fascinating lecture, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone when I say so. Now, let us have a look at the questions. The first question is by Ginny Kennedy, student, BA English Literature, All Saints College, Trivandrum, Kerala. Ginny has asked, literature is the mirror of society. How can we connect this with the aspect of children's literature?
You see, I would like to, in fact, recommend a very interesting essay, actually. It's an essay by Felicity Hughes. It's called Children's Literature, Theory and Criticism. It's a very interesting essay because, Hughes sort of, in this particular essay, she talks about when did this category of children's literature actually come into being. And she says that, if you start, digging deep into this question, when does this category come into being? She says that, the history of children's literature, in fact, coincides, with the history of, the novel. So that she's looking at this kind of, parallel history. And then she goes on to say that, however, there is this kind of difference that has come into being, and this difference came into being because there was an increasing emphasis to differentiate between novel as a high art form, as an elite form, and children's literature as something that is meant for the child. However, if one looks at, Lewis Carroll's text through the looking glass, it's a very interesting portrayal of Victorian society. And that's, when I'm speaking to my students, that's always what I say, that the text functions at a dizzying space. You look at the sheer pace of the text, it almost seems that Alice is moving from one dream episode to another at a very quick pace. It's all happening very quickly. It's all happening very fast. And you see, I mean, that's such an interesting depiction of the Victorian age, because with the coming in of industrial revolution, with advances in sciences, technology, steam engine, assembly line fashion, trains, railways, uh, time and space are really, I mean, the contours of time and space have really, changed. And in fact, it is that reality, this kind of this kind of unfathomable change that would accompany Victorian age, that is being represented in Through the Looking Glass. So in that sense, yeah, I mean, the text is such an interesting exploration, as well as such an interesting commentary, as well as a very interesting representation of, the change in the contours of time and space, that are taking place in Victorian age, with the growth, with the development of, sciences and technology. So yeah, I mean, it is possible to look at the text as a reflection, of its time, so to say.
Thank you. The next question is by Rituban Bhattacharya, PhD research scholar, Rabindra Bharati University, West Bengal. He has asked, if the nonsense is to be seen as a satire, an inversion of satire, in what way is the nonsense limited by and changed to the episteme? Are the boundaries of nonsense as limited as that of sense?
You see, I mean, I can only comment. I mean, if I look at vis-a-vis Through the Looking Glass, I mean, of course, it's a nonsense that is tied, to the the sense as we know it. I mean, it's whether it's a play on words, whether it's a play on social etiquettes. I mean, this is a nonsense that's heavily dependent on what we know as sense. However, what I find very curious, and this is, again, I mean, this is it's not quite an answer, but in fact open for discussion, is that the text doesn't quite end, it doesn't quite close with Alice waking up from the dream. That is not where the text comes to an end. That is not where the text, closes. The text, in fact, comes to an end. It, in fact, closes with this question of who dreamt this dream. Was it me? And or was it in fact the king, huh? Or was it in fact the red king? And I think that has sort of this, that can of course become a launch pad, that can sort of open discussions about can this, the sheer potential of, let's say, nonsense to be free of, let's say, its initial origins, so to say. I mean, I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, thank you so much. The next question is by Rudra Shankar Mitro, a student of English Honours, Syamaprasad College. Can we say that stories like that of Wonderland were written as a protest against the conventional education or training that was forced on children and helps children to explore their creativity?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, I mean, the fact that, Through the Looking Glass is, read as popular fiction. I mean, the fact that Through the Looking Glass is read as children's fiction, I think it's very important to locate it within that tradition. And I do believe that, even when we speak about nonsense, or even if when we speak about, this kind of, the text which represents, the Victorian age, I think first and foremost we have to remember that, this is a text which is enjoyed by children, which makes sense to them. And like, I mean, I do think that this is a text that moves away from the kind of writing that was being done in Victorian age, this kind of moral socialization, this kind of moral education, of children that was taking place. And I mean, in fact, to share an anecdote, I'm simultaneously teaching the Blue Umbrella by Ruskin Bond, which is also often looked in terms of is looked as children's literature, children's writing. And it's very different. You see, it's very different from Through the Looking Glass. This is not nonsense literature, but at the same time, you see, it's still not, I mean, it doesn't quite have this kind of garb of morality that is sort of very threatening either. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, I mean, this is a text that is being written to release the creative potential, to stimulate children, and not sort of box their creativity, so to say, by narrating stories where if they don't follow rules, they will be punished. After all, what's happening in Through the Looking Glass? I mean, these rules are being mocked, these rules are being made fun of.
Right. Shukonna Pal, Assistant Professor of English, Jibontala Rokeya Mahavidyalay, she has asked, do you think that Dodson deliberately attempts to subvert the real virtual binary at the very beginning of The Looking Glass, thus throwing open the text to multiple interpretations?
Absolutely. In fact, not just at the beginning of the text, I mean, like I said, but also the way that the text ends. I mean, the text ends on a rather postmodern note, where you can't differentiate between where do the boundaries and the borders of the real end, and where do the boundaries and the borders of this other reality begin. And that, of course, reminds me of that story with I dreamt that I was a butterfly, and then when I woke up, and extremely philosophical, and postmodern in that sense. And when I woke up, I didn't know that, whether I was a man who dreamt of a butterfly, or whether I was a butterfly who dreamt of being a man. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, in fact, I think this kind of wordplay, this kind of subversion already points towards this movement away from modernity, and this promise of post modernity. I mean, and that also answers the question which someone asked some time back about nonsense and its epistemological potential, after all.
Okay, I think we can accommodate one last question by Najia Nazar. Can the linguistic and social inversion of the narratives of text be considered an instance of posthumanistic perspective of the absurdly constructed human reality?
Yeah, absolutely. Go on. I'm so sorry. My God.
Najia Nazar from the University of Kerala. She's a research scholar.
Could you say that question again, just so that?
Yeah, sure. Can the linguistic and social inversion of the narratives of text be considered an instance of posthumanistic perspective of the absurdly constructed human reality?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. In fact, I think it is, when we start looking, through the looking glass, in terms of this kind of, we start exploring the postmodern tensions in it. We start exploring the, post-humanistic tensions in it. Do we actually reach the potential of the text? And this and like I said, I mean, that's the thing with Carol. Even though this is a text that is so available to all kinds of permutation combination, this is a text that is so available to all kinds of meaning making. At the same time, this is the text where the moment that you start making meaning, the Carol is the one who is having the last laugh. And but I mean, at the same time, the creativity of the text stays intact. I mean, it can be sort of given to all kinds of readings and studies. So absolutely. I mean, I think that would be a great study, in fact.
Can I ask one last question? It has been put forward by Shubhojyoti Ghosh, B.Ed trainee, St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. Was children's literature written to preach morality and ethics to adults in a non-conventional way? As most of the time we see children's literature is often interpreted as not so children.
That's a good question, you see, because I'm also thinking in terms of who is the reader of children's fiction. And you see, I mean, this is a question that has led to multiple debates. You see, Jacqueline Rose, for example, has, let me just put down the name here. Has asked this very question that who is this child in children's fiction. And the term that of course she employs is that who is this phantom child, because the idea that she's trying to entertain is that, is this even a real child? Because I mean, who is after all, one, reading children's fiction, and secondly, who after all is writing this children's fiction? If it's a children's fiction that's being written by adults, then I mean, Lewis Carroll in this case, how far is it really children's fiction? To answer your question about, I mean, of course, I mean, there was this kind of, project, of moral education, of moral socialization of children, and, literacy rates were going up in Victorian age. But were these texts somehow meant, for adults, for, them to read? And I don't know how far. I mean, I don't know how far that would be true. But did adults read these texts? Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm at the top of my head, I'm thinking about Harry Potter. I mean, even though it's pitched as, initially it was children's fiction, then I mean, because we know how the market works and how industry works, then it was young adult, and then one doesn't quite know how to position it. But as adults, we have all read that text. Perhaps that answers your question. I'm not sure if it was meant for them, but I won't be surprised. And in fact, I can say that it would have been read by them.
Thank you so much, Professor Sakshi Dogra, for your responses. There are many other questions, but all of them cannot be accommodated because of the time limit. Now I would like to ask Ms. Damini Ray to take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anurima. That was a very fruitful interactive session. And I'd also like to thank both of our speakers again for a very enriching afternoon. And I'm sure all of our participants have enjoyed both sessions tremendously. So now I'd request our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Srinivas Singh Yadav, to formally deliver the vote of thanks. Srinivas, sir. Yadav, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. A very nice session. We had two presentations, and we have come to the end of this seminar. And so we are here. So this is the time for formal Thanksgiving. At first, I should express my sincere thanks and hearty congratulations to Honorable Resource Persons Dr. Partho Bhattacharjee, Assistant Professor, Department of English, MIT University Patna, and Ms. Sakshi Dogra, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Gargi College, Delhi, for their informative and fruitful discussion on very relevant topics. I would like to thank the Honorable Vice Principal and HOD, Department of History of Syamaprasad College, and also the Chief Patron of this webinar, Dr. Sushmita Mukherjee, on her constant enthusiasm to inspire us for organization of such a webinar. Thanks should also be given to Ms. Anjana Dev, HOD, Department of English, and also the patron of the webinar for organizing the webinar. I should also convey my sincere thanks to convener of the webinar, Dr. Muhammad Abdul Salim, Assistant Professor, Department of English, and Joint Convener, Ms. Damini Ray, Assistant Professor, Department of English, along with member of organizing committee under their dynamic leadership, the committee members, Dr. Suchishmita Biswas Mitra, Associate Professor, Department of English, Ms. Priya Mide, SACT, Department of English, and Ms. Arunima Paul, SACT, Department of English, have been working hard for the last few days to make the program a grand success. My thanksgiving would remain incomplete without mentioning the name of Professor Mithun Gayan, Assistant Professor, Department of English, and Sulagna Som, SACT, Department of History, for their technical support. Last but not the least, I must convey my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to all the participants for their patience, hearing, and kind cooperation. Once again, I thank you everyone. Thanks a lot. Over to Salim sir.
Thank you, Dr. S.S. Jadhav. Thank you very much for your vote of thanks. Our IQC coordinator, Dr. S.S. Jadhav, has been offering his valuable suggestions from time to time in order to make this webinar a great success. So once again, I should offer my thanks to Dr. Jadhav. And I would also like to thank Damini. And I would like to thank once again all the participants, our honorable speakers, Dr. Partha Bhattacharjee and Ms. Sakshi Dogra. And I would like to extend my thanks to Mithun Gayan and Shulagna Shom for their technical assistance. And I would like to thank also our Honorable Vice Principal, our HOD Department of English, and all the organizing committee members, including Onirima, Priya, Shuchismita, everyone. And I would like to thank once again my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to all the participants for your kind cooperation. And with this, I would like to declare the end of today's webinar. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations to all for a successful webinar.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks to English department.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Once again, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you so